Am I too loud?
Oh, no, no, you're good.
Okay.
Good evening, chocolate people and everybody in the Cocoa Verse. This is Mr. Chocolate, and welcome to the Chocolate Life. Once again, we are back, and we have our resident co host with us, Coach K. And today we have a great episode uh, coming Flat Black versus Culturally White. And we'll be covering a lot of ground. And Coach K, let's get it cracking.
Well, hello, Mr. Chocolate, and hello, Coco Verse. I'm just happy to be back with you guys again this week. Once again, we appreciate all you good people who decide to tune in and become a little bit more um, aware of how to uh, approach your community when you are having people to get on board with you to extend this journey we call life in a more meaningful way. As he stated earlier, we're going to talk about American politics and how the concept of being flat black versus culturally white is really the legal framework or how we understand this country. If we go outside of that and try to make it to be anything else from the quote unquote your belief, your assumptions, and not look at it legally, you're probably going to miss all the dynamics that have really evaded us for the last however many years since 1965 when the Kerner report was made. And at that point, the white politicians decided that they weren't going to address Black people no more. That is when they came up with these categories called uh, multicultural, um, inclusivity, which means now multicultural, not talking about religious affiliation, sexual orientation, all of these different things was placed under what they call minorities. All of these words were created by people other than our own community. So we must revisit these definitions and see if we still want to embrace them. Yes, it's good to understand what they mean, but us embracing them along with other people embracing them, and we are still flat black. And we're going to get into that a little bit later. But what I'm going to do right now is allow Mr. Chocolate to just give us some definitions of how a society, all these systems in the society operate. And they were set up by, quote unquote, the corporations that now call themselves white. Okay. A concept that was developed in 1613 by a man named Thomas Middleton. And Thomas Middleton wrote a play, The Triumphs of Truth. And in that, that's when the first time Europeans, pale skinned Negroes, start calling themselves white. And that has been filtered in through every aspect of a society ever since. So, with that, I'm going to let Mr. Chocolate come back and just give us some definitions that you may recognize, but may not have the full context and the meaning to each of these definitions. Mr. Chocolate.
All right. Um, well, there were 10 specific definitions I was given to look up and define. And so those were ethnicity, religious affiliation, nationality, region, sexual orientation, DNA immigration, economic status, social status, and political affiliation. So we're going to start with ethnicity, which means quality or affiliation Or second definition, a particular ethnic affiliation or group. And it was first used in the United States in 1920. Um, so, with ethnicity, a lot of people kind of natural, for whatever reason, kind of pair nationality and ethnicity into the same thing, but not necessarily. That's not necessarily the case. And I'm also going to give the nationality, the status belonging to a particular nation, to an ethnic group forming a part of one or more political nations. So your nationality has to be recognized by a country, or an ethnic group has to be an ethnic group was formed and has to be recognized as a part of one or more political nations. Um, and by what you're taught in school, K through 12, and even in college, when you're talking about countries, nationalities, and cultures, nationality and ethnicity is kind of willy nilly, willy nillingly intertwined. I think I just made up a word. Neither here nor there. But those two definitions get very, very intertwined, and I think a lot of our political leaders, when they make laws, they intertwine them in the laws and kind of using that to their advantage. Region, an area or division, especially part of a country or a part of the world having definable characteristics. Um, so, perfect example, people up north, one thing that's very, very common, they say people from up north talk fast. And what do they say about people from down south? We talk slow and we have a drawl. And that's if you're from the southern region, that's what you're known for. If you're from the northern region, that's what you're known for. But are regions go all are then there are sub-regions within larger regions. Okay. And then there's religious affiliations. The religion, the religious belief or practices that a person has either been born to or belong to. And so basically, whatever your belief is religiously or practice, that is your affiliation. That's the group that you belong to. And yeah, a lot of people's culture, the religious affiliation, ethnicity, nationality, region is all interwoven. Uh, Next definition is sexual orientation. Orientation. A person identity, a person's identity in relation to gender or genders to which they are sexually attracted to, being heterosexual, homosexual, sapiosexual, etc. Okay, DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, the hereditary material in humans and almost every other organism. Now, that's what DNA is. Now, if you're trying to figure out your roots as far as now, that's not necessarily relevant to this time. If you're trying to find your roots, you gotta do some homework. It's very academic. and also non-academic. Court records, birth, death records, lien, property deeds, military records, census. That's how you can trace your roots. It's not a test where you send your piece of your DNA to a lab where all they're gonna do is harvest it and give you some manufactured graphs and skewed information. Hashtag go listen to Dane Calloway. Um, Now, immigration is the next definition. Now, there's two definitions to immigration. There is immigration with an I and immigration with an E. I'm going to give the immigration with an I first. Immigration, the action of coming to live in a foreign country. Second definition, the place at a travel venue where government officials check documents before entering a country. Immigration with an E. To leave one's own nation to settle in another foreign country permanently. Immigration with an I, immigration with an E. Now, when we want to leave the country and go to another country to live permanently and have our documentation and all that good stuff, we emigrate with an E. Now, when you up and leave one country and go to another country to get to another country to get to another country with no documentation whatsoever, that is immigration.
Mr. Chocolate,
And it,
could I insert something in there right quick?
yes.
Okay, immigration with the E, the best way to define, to look at it, because one one reason that for us to look these up, because some of the definitions we're looking at, we're still looking at it from how Europeans understand words, period. But I'm glad you brought up immigration with an E, because the most simplest way to talk about immigration with an E is the Trail of Tears. Now, if people don't know what that is,
Mm,
yeah, we were already here, but you got forced because A, this is your homeland. You're an indigenous person to this particular area. However, you don't have legal status, and that's the whole idea of looking up these different words. When these colonizers came over here and set up legal status, that means people who were not a part of their regime, okay, they became illegal inhabitants on their own soil.
yep. That is the perfect example. I was, for some crazy, I think I was overthinking.
That's okay.
I, yeah, I think I was overthinking on that one because I completely overshot that one.
Well, I mean, but we didn't even discuss the E and the I part, but I'm glad you mentioned that because that helps us to stretch our learning curve. So, okay. That's all I wanted to add for that for right now.
Okay. Um, and okay, the next definition is economic status. Status measured by hierarchy, hierarch, hierarchical hierarchy as far as class, wages and salary, income, and occupational prestige. All right, social status, a standing or importance in relation to the people within a society or community. All right, and the next definition is political affiliation, belonging to or identifying with a political party, a blah, 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 a particular political party, supporting a particular candidate, or in some way supporting a political cause or agenda. That is that is a political affiliation, and that is all 10 definitions.
I appreciate you going through those, but before you inject the other part, I want to just piggyback a little bit on those and help the
Hmm.
audience to see for themselves why these are important, because we know everybody that listen to this podcast are not in the United States. So therefore, taking these different definitions, and when you said a religious affiliation, I thought of Iran, because Iran is under a religious hierarchy led by the Ayatollah. They have all of these different people underneath, but that still the Ayatollah is the head of the whole country. Such and same thing with other places in that area who are under monarchy rule. They're just like Britain. Um, and we've actually covered that before when we talked about all of the different titles, such as czar or a monarch, which is a king or queen or whatever. That's the same thing we're still seeing, but at the same time, we're seeing all of these things overlap. And in the United States, and the reason we're having this conversation because um, we have been placed in boxes, okay? And I say it flat black. Remember, anytime um, the colonizers or the reporters, however you want to frame how the United States is structured, talk about the whole continent that we now call Africa, nobody ever says they're Kenyan. Now, the people who are from these different ethnic groups identify themselves by different groups. And these groups were formed in 1884. However, everybody in America, the indoctrination is everybody's just African. So that is a form of flat black. It's the same equivalent to us over here when people look at us and identify. They don't care what religion you are once you get over here. Now we know that our melanated immigrants will come over here from the continent and they will tell people all day which part of the continent they're from. However, when they get shot down in the street, the way the young man got beat with the broom up in New York, he was just another nigga. That's all they saw. When the white cop had to get off, the whole, not the white cop, the Chinese cop was got off for killing him. Uh, the whole community got behind him because we're looking at uh, the Asian community coming together. The point is, we have been taught to be divided, even though we try to hold on to all of these different uh, little bitty snippets that were created by someone else. My point is, there were no Egyptians, there were no Kenyans, there were no uh, Rwandans, there were no South Africans before 1884. They were all people who enjoyed the full continent. Uh, Europeans carved up the continent and put names and stickers, and people are still abiding by those names and those stickers instead of trying to form unity. Same thing with us here. We have been indoctrinated so much that accept we accept we accept the religion, we accept the politics, we accept, as you said earlier, the North and the South, or the East and the West. Everybody is now, you don't want to be a man, you can be a woman. You don't want to be a woman, you can be an other. You can be a pansexual. In other words, you can pick and choose. Uh, as you said earlier, DNA is good if you're trying to get blood transfusion in the hospital. They amazing they kept Henrietta Lacks cells secret, although her cells are the reason everybody can do research ever since she died. Now, think about that later. Immigration, economic status, as we've said earlier in other uh, broadcasts, the economic status, we're at the bottom. That's the flat black. And everybody else get to come in and be a part of the white culture. All they have to do is be here a couple of days. Their skin can be darker than ours, or they can be the same complexion as ours. Everybody who, quote unquote, who have lived the experience of being at the bottom don't have dark skin. Walter White, who actually was responsible for helping uh, Israel become a nation, he can pass for any white man. Matter of fact, he did. So he can bring information back to the community. But he also understood his experience. So when people talk and harp on DNA as if it is the be all of whatever it is for life, that does the experience of life such a disservice, because if it wasn't for people like Walter White or what's the guy from New York who went up against King, and his father came out of slavery, but he always, well, even Lena Horne. Lena Horne could have passed for white any day.
Talking
However,
about Adam Clayton Powell.
Adam Clayton Powell, these experience put them in the caste, and I use caste and elites meaning the same thing, because we're going to get to that a little bit later when you tie these social status, because the social status that are given to people in life by certain groups give people the idea that they are validated. Okay, validated. When I say validated, because white is a structural political dynamic that was set up by Europeans, and Europeans have never called themselves European Americans. However, they will tell us all day that we are African Americans. Um, some of us who are listening to this podcast, ancestry have never been on the continent of Africa. They started right here. They were here before the continent was named Africa. And I hope we can eventually understand that concept in the way I'm putting it together. That body of land was not always called Africa. So therefore, the people who are here, who are very melanated, who once upon a time was called Negroes, who were called colored, who are now called African Americans or Blacks or FBA or Foundation of Black America, whichever title you want to label yourself, some of the heritage and lineage of the indigenous people started right here. But unless we do our own homework, we continue to buy into all of these dividers. And these dividers only help the European structure that is now set up, the political structure, and now they have a roadmap. When I say roadmap, because now they have what they call Project 2025. Project 2025 is their roadmap to erase all of those categories you just talked about, and just continue this caste system. And this caste system, which I just said, means that the elites get to control, and they get to decide who's white, because the courts have decided that. They decided that back in 1910 and again in 1923. They decided who's white from people coming from other countries, some of them skin, as I stated, darker than ours, but they are white legally, okay, culturally, because most of them, they come from Brahmin context, which are the people from the country of India. They have come over here, and for the most part, I'll talk about them later. How many people have gotten very prominent positions, and they continue to have prominent positions. But when it's convenient, then they become conveniently Black. But there is nothing about what they do in life is Black. But there are also people who are at the bottom of the caste system who came through slavery, i.e., people who came from Ireland and some of them Scotland and some of them uh, England, were slaves in Australia, slaves South Africa, slaves in the Americas, in the Caribbean, white slaves. However, that has never been taught. So therefore, Europeans who are pale skinned have been brainwashed to believe simply because they are adjacent to whiteness, which is rulership, or because they have been given white privilege, that they get to continue to enjoy this. And now we're about to see all of this play out on stage, thanks to Donald Trump, thanks to JD Vance. JD Vance put a book out. But we'll get to that because we want everybody to understand how whiteness or culturally white allow people the opportunity to terrorize the country. But at the same time, they are never named as domestic terrorists in their description. They're also humanized. Whereas Black people, and when I say Black people, I'm talking about a political term now. Black people are labeled all kinds of derogatory names. Some of us embrace these derogatory names. We call ourselves these derogatory names. Or we call other Black people derogatory names. And we start manifesting that sense of entitlement that you're supposed to live good and other people don't. And if we put everybody in rich and poor, more of these pale skinned, poor white trash. Look that book up, okay? That's a book. That's a political book that needs to be read. Poor white trash need to look up because that's a word that was created by Europeans also. Because they don't consider poor white people who live in what we call the rural areas to be valuable. But they don't know that because instead of using poor white trash, which is more of a derogatory term, they call them rural people. And they call Black people urban people. All of those are code words for the very rich. I don't care what political affiliation. And we have fell into all of these traps to feel like we belong to some type of power structure, when in essence, we have no economic power, so therefore we have no power. But I want us to visit for a moment. Mr. Chocolate is going to help us to revisit how many times and how many ways this political structure that is in place have allowed domestic terrorism to just ravage the society we call America. And now it's about to be on full display, thanks to the young man who tried to take out the former president last week. There are still reports coming out to say that this young man didn't work alone, or it's a possibility he didn't work alone. And the trajectory of the bullet, all kinds of stuff are being said. But at the same time, we have to ask the question, why is it that there was so much wall-to-wall coverage when the two young men who, one of them, no, I think both of them were military guys who didn't like the idea that America was killing Black men in the street or just killing Black people a few years ago when Barack Obama was president. And they had to be on high alert because these two men, and it was almost concurrent when they killed what they perceive as a threat to the Black community. And I'm using that because that's their word. They perceived these people were a threat to the Black community, so they took matters in their own hands. And the country just ran roughshod, just demonizing all Black men and making sure that the cops can still have qualified immunity to continue to kill us, and we have no laws to protect us. So we need to start learning these coded words, because inside of each one of those words, that Mr. Chocolate just gave us are systems that are set up. And they began to be set up with the Census Bureau. The Census Bureau is the most racist piece of document that the United States put in place because it was set up so the elites can see how they can manage people around the country. That's it. They set themselves up not as European America, but as white. That's a power structure. And from that, everybody else have been falling into different categories. But if you work in any type of governmental job or a place where you see the identity on different labels, they would say Hispanic white. Okay, how does Hispanic get to be white? But that's a conversation for another day. But these are the signals that the corporations who run America have put in place so they can actually continue to keep us from developing a structure so we can start talking about how we gain economic power. So, with that, I'm going to let you just share with them how many times in the last 5 years domestic terrorism has been a part of all of these political or nationality. Well, really, the white group which forms this, but at the same time, none of these people were called white people.
Right. So, in the last 5 years, there have been 44 mass shootings that were done where people were where people were described and talked about as if they were humans per se. Perfect. Number one, Travis Posey, June 21st, he shot up grocery store in Fordyce, Arkansas. He killed 14 people. Then there was the shooting UNLV, December 6, 2023. Anthony Polito, he was 67. He was a professor. Died in a shootout with the police. Then in Lewiston, Maine, Robert Card, age 40, an Army reservist firearms instructor, opened fire in 2 locations and then fled. Okay. Then there was the Orange County shooting. John Snowling, age 59, a retired sergeant with the Ventura Police Department, killed 9 people. He was targeting his estranged wife, but ended up killing many more people. All right. Hold on right quick. Wait, what's going on? Okay, here we go. Okay. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, July 3rd. Kim Brady Carricker. Hold on. Age 40, wearing ski mask and body armor, opened fire at random people in the street in a southwestern neighborhood. He killed 7 people. Bo Wilson, 18, opened fire. This was Farmington, New Mexico. Opened fire in his neighborhood around his home, shooting at random people. He killed 9 people. Mauricio Garcia, 33, wore tactical gear. Uh, wore tactical gear. Wore tactical gear and opened fire. He killed 15 people in Allen, Texas, in a Texas outlet mall. The 10th one, Louisville, Kentucky, in a Louisville bank. Connor Sturgeon. He killed 13 people when he opened fire at the Old National Bank. Nashville, Tennessee, at Nashville Christian School. Audrey Hale, 28, a former student at the school, killed 3 adults and 3 9-year-old kids before being killed himself. He killed a total of 12 people.
I want to make a statement there, if that's okay.
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 Yes.
Are you identifying this person as a he or a she? Because I thought this person identified themselves as a she.
Yes, they
Okay.
identified themselves as a
Okay.
she.
Okay, that's what we want to do, regardless of how we feel about it, because that is what's happening right now. Um,
Okay.
we're talking about political status. We're not talking about ethical or moral. We're just talking about politics, because politics change whenever people decide how they want the politics to go. And it does not have to be moral or ethical. It just has to be because they say so and they change it. That's why I say if this person identified themselves as a she, identify them as a she. We understand that, but we want to use the ramification that's being used so we all can learn how to use truth. We don't have to be as mean spirit as all of these people who have quote unquote decided they know better than anybody in society. And if they say so, i.e., white supremacy, if they say so, these are the rules and everybody has to follow them. Or as the guy from, what was that, the Heritage Foundation? In other words, he
Hmm.
said, if it's not a peaceful transfer, in other words, they can start, popping off. So we got people who talk about killing the community, okay? Causing, as they say, a civil war. They talk language of killing all the time and be the first to act if though they're not violent. Their whole behavior since they arrived out of the caves have been violent. Those are just facts. Okay, go ahead.
Um, the next one was the Michigan State University shooting. Uh, on February the 13th, 2023, Anthony McCrae. He opened fire at Berkeley Hall and then the student union. And he there were 8 total victims. 5 were injured and 3 were killed. The next was Half Moon Bay, California, January 23rd, 2023. Chun Li Zhao, age 67, suspected of carrying out attacks at a mushroom farm near a trucking facility and was apprehended by the police. Um, he killed seven, injured one. All right, the next person, Monterey, uh, Monterey Park, California, at the LA Dance Studio. This was 2 days before Chun Li Zhao did his shooting at Half Moon Bay. Who can Tran? Uh, who can Tran fled the scene in a white van and later shot himself as police closed in on him. Um, he was 72 years old. He killed 11 people, injured 10. Then there's Chesapeake, Virginia, November 11th, 2022. Andre Bing. He killed 6 and injured 6. Uh, he opened, uh, yeah, he worked as a supervisor at the store and just opened fire one day. All right, Colorado Springs, Colorado, November 19th, 2022. Anderson Aldrich, 22, wore body armor and opened fire upon entering the club as a dance party was going on. As the dance party was going on, there was 5 total fatalities. 3 were killed and 2 were injured. Then there was the Hedingham, North Carolina shooting, which is in the Raleigh area. October 13th, 2022, Austin Thompson. Austin Thompson went on a rampage in the Hedingham neighborhood where he lived. One of the fatalities was his 16-year-old brother, James. Thompson also critically wounded and was apprehended by a police officer after a long standoff. The next one was at Greenwood Park in Greenwood, Indiana, July 17th, 2022. Jonathan, oh my goodness, how do you say that? Jonathan Sapperman, age 20, opened fire in a mall food court and was soon shot dead by a 22-year-old armed civilian whose response whose local response called nothing short of a hero. He wounded 3 people. He killed 3 people and wounded 2 others. Then there's the Highland Park 4th of July. Highland Park 4th of July shooting in Highland Park, Illinois. Suspected gunman Robbie Cremo allegedly opened fire with a rifle from a rooftop during the Independence Day parade. He killed 7 and wounded 46. Wow. We're only halfway through the list because there's 44 in the last
Well,
5 years.
okay, well, if you would, I want you to give us just four more, and because you say you halfway, and that's 5 years, and I promise you, I didn't know it was that many. How many you say you halfway? So how many more? Just tell me the total, so we can
The
help.
total is 44 over the
Okay.
last 5 years.
Okay, because what we want the audience to do is to recognize how many mass killings. I didn't say shooting. Shootings are not the same. Shooting simply means a person could be injured. We're talking about mass killing. People are dying and their lives are, their whole lives are being destroyed. However, the only time the United States talk about killing and put an emphasis on it is when they try to state that the urban killing or black on black crime. They never say white on white crime. They never say Asian on Asian crime. And I heard you even mention that. And they never talk about all the mass shooters who have been bred at home, okay? Because some of these people went to homeschool. Um, and they're coming out in the community and just shooting people. So, and I'm not talking about gun laws, so I'm not even getting into that discussion. I'm simply talking about how the political structure does not label white mass shooters as criminals. That's the part I want us to home in on. Black guys who used to rap or used to do drugs, whatever the case may be, and now they're trying to get their lives together. They're always called gangbangers. They're always called thugs. All of these derogatory names, and then sometimes we call each other these things. But learning how to recognize the language is important because now I want to tie this to the shooter that happened on Saturday. That young man is under 25 years old. He wore a vest, and I heard you talk about somebody in the conversation how they had on a vest, which means these people prepared to come kill people. In other words, they went people hunting, and that's what we're seeing. We're seeing a whole group of Gen Xers who have been groomed to assist in killing the population. Okay. And we could go back to some of the reason why people thought it was a good thing to kill people, like the Columbine thing. They killed white kids because they wanted to kill black people, but there were none available. We can talk about Peyton Gendry, who, according to records, okay, the ones that were scrubbed from the internet, that this young man collaborated with an ex-law enforcement person. So his manifesto, that's what it says. So we're talking about all of these that the society has allowed, and now they are putting this thing they call Project 2025 together to simply allow this to be a way of life. Yet and still, we see this young person who took a shot at the former president, and everybody came to this convention that was held last week. And nobody brought that out. Nobody talked about, I mean, everybody, got on the let's bandage our ear as if everybody is fifth grade and let's be like Mike and bandage our ears and look stupid, and they're grown people. They got on that insane trajectory to placate to a 77, however old Donald Trump is, to placate to a person's ego that has never meant anything or tried to do anything in society that did not benefit him. And that is what we're looking at. And we also saw the same thing on stage. We saw a lot of flat black. And when I say flat black, the people online lost their ever loving mind. And I'm talking about the young white males when they saw Amber Rose. Okay, Amber Rose was one of the first person that they just destroyed online. First of all, Amber Rose says she's a rapper. Now, my knowledge, I don't know enough about these young people to know every detail of their lives. But I don't see anywhere. I've never heard Amber Rose sing any rapper record that I could Google on the internet. So Amber Rose is one of these people who, as she stated herself just a few days ago, where one of the reporters said she don't identify as black, so therefore I'm not going to call her black. She's ambiguous. All of these lovely words. Europeans came from black people. Okay, when I say black, I'm talking about organic, parts of the earth, chem or chemistry, because chem is the root word for chemistry, and it's also the root word for black. Just like Negro, it's a Spanish word, it's a hieroglyphic word. Negro is a word for black. And the reason the Europeans from Britain started calling people black, I mean, calling them Negroes, is to let the other colonizers know that they had hijacked ships that belonged to the Spanish. And this is the booty that they received. They've been using code words for a long time. And we don't know this until we do research to discover how many layers there are in all of these caste systems. Amber Rose, tattoo face, but at the same time, we got to ask the question, why was Amber Rose up on the stage? Now, I thought she was up there because Donald Trump loved to, white supremacy loved to they have guilty pleasure and they love to use us as their laughing stock. So I thought Amber Rose was up there because Donald Trump understood that she called herself a slut. Okay, so I looked at that. Okay, so perhaps he see all black women as sluts. I didn't know. But now I've discovered that Amber Rose have been ripping people off. So she's trying to get in good with Donald Trump. So if he get elected, he can give her a pardon because she's been doing crypto scams. That's the word in the internet streets. So that's the Amber Rose part. But we also have Tim Scott, who is, by all definition, a black man, but politically he's always been white. He's always carried water for white supremacy. This man has been famous for saying, America is not a racist country. So I don't know if he believes that himself or he has been paid quite well to continue to repeat that line. But Gen Xers are not that stupid. So we have to give young people credit where it's due. They are very savvy when it comes to the internet streets. They can look up stuff for themselves. So they're not buying all of these lies that Ben Carson, who used to be a famous neurosurgeon, but at this point have lost his mind. I guess too much anesthesia went up his nose. I don't know. I just know that this man who did a number of surgeries when he was a professional doctor, now we see that he has no use for all of the people that he was supposed to be a part of the community. As a matter of fact, Ben Carson said slaves were laborers. So it's not enough that we have white supremacy putting misinformation into context to form books to continue to dumb down the whole community, because black people are not the only people dumb. White people are dumb too. Sometimes they are the dumbest because they don't know about their own culture, and therefore we got to teach them about the real history, which sometimes can be overly exhausting to try to, if you're having a conversation, supposedly a civil conversation, with a group of people, you got to break down everything, which is madness. But what we want to do here is look at what happened this past week after the shooting. Nobody talked about it. So we got to do some comparison analysis. Why is it people not talking about an attempted shooting on an ex-president? Is it not important, or is it something else? Because to me, that would be a really big thing if an ex-president can't even be protected by the very people who said they are protecting him. When I say people, I'm not just talking about the Secret Service. I'm talking about all of these people who's supposed to be a part of law enforcement, because they're supposed to work together. But as we can see, people work together for power. They don't work together to protect people. So with that being said, we're just going to run right along to talk about what happened on this stage with all of these people who are disguising themselves as being something that they're not. Not only do we have Tim Scott, we have Nimrata Haley, better known as Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley, Bobby Jindal, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, Kamala Harris, Vivek Ramaswamy, Yusa Vance, J.D. Vance's wife. All of these people are from the Brahmin class. All of these people have the status of associating themselves culturally white, because that's what they are. But if you have not studied the culture of India, then you will still be fighting like the AKAs, when they will swear up and down that Kamala Harris is a Black woman. Kamala Harris was raised in Canada after age 6 or 7 or 8. She was raised in Canada. She was not raised in the United States. She came back to the United States the same way all people feast off of our struggle. They want the benefits of Blackness, but they don't want the baggage. And we have to get smarter than all of these people that white supremacy is putting in our faces. I don't care if it's white supremacy politically left, politically right, politically Republican, politically Democrat, politically independent. If these people are not talking about how to keep us safe in this society, not talking about reparation that we are due, then they're not helping us. So we have to be smarter than what we're being fed, because the lies are coming from both sides of the spectrum when we talk about the so-called news media. Everybody is lying to us. We have to really find out information for ourselves. All the people I just named, Nikki Haley went over to Israel and signed her name on a bomb to kill people. How? Talking about political or religious association, how is that, quote unquote, very Christian? You're okay with just killing a whole swath of people who historically it's their land, regardless of what the politics says. Politics have given the land to Israel because that's what white supremacy do. It move people off of their land and replace them with other people. The same the way our ancestors, some of us on this land. And we had a paper genocide in the 1920s when Peckler decided that anybody who was still calling themselves an Indian on this side of the Mississippi River, you could be legally shot. Because if you wasn't identified yourself as being at that time, that's what it was. You were colored in the census. I'm not talking about all these new definitions. I'm talking about how the country has continued to relabel and reclassified and recategorized by us. And we have to start asking ourselves a question. How is it that melanated people indigenous to the earth, okay? Wherever we are on the earth, there were melanated people before there were. So we had to ask the question, how is it that our definition of whomever we say we are continue to change, yet and still white people simply white? And that's flat too. Culturally white simply means I fit into the power structure. Because that's what all these Indians from India has done. J.D. Vance's wife, probably as dark as I am. J.D. Vance's wife has never been part of my experience and probably part of most of the people who listen to this podcast. Not a part of your experience either. And these people at that convenient because her skin is dark, they decided that she wasn't a white person. When let me correct that, not technically, politically, she is a white person. So we've seen all of these people. And now we got to go back and look at our own communities for those of you around the globe. For instance, Bangladesh young people were just protesting in the street because their government has been discriminating against them ever since 1970, I think it's 71, when they got their independence from Pakistan. But Bangladesh are all melanated people. But brown people are categorized according to their so-called ethnicity, unless they're on the continent. Think about that for a moment. People on the continent are all called African. Doesn't matter what culture, what traditions, whatever you say. When you get over here, you get put in that flat black category, just like J.D. Vance's wife. Okay? Even though there's nothing about her or Kamala Harris that identify with our experience. So it's up to us to learn. But we must learn the American political structure in order to make a difference in our own communities. Because that's what our goal is. How do we make a difference in our own community? But if we don't educate ourselves, that's going to be kind of hard. Very hard for us to do. Mr. Chocolate, do you have anything else?
That is it for the most part. Yes. Disclaimer: the Chocolate Life podcast does not endorse any political affiliation or religious affiliation. We merely put out information and leave that for you to decide under your own cognition and own judgment. We would also like to thank you for us reaching a certain number of listeners. And we would also like to give a shout out for the country of our listeners from India who are listening more and more. Please keep spreading the good chocolate news. If you have any questions, please send your email to therealchocolatelife@gmail.com. And please check us out on all multiple platforms: Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, Jam, Pandora, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, Castbox, and all other podcasting platforms. Zencaster as well. Also, in the next few weeks, Google Podcasts will be shutting down. So If you are looking for another platform, please take a look at Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, Pandora, Zencaster, Castbox, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, and Pandora, and Jam as well. That's all we have this week. Be peaceful, be blessed, be vigilant, stay ready so you don't have to get ready. This is the Chocolate Life, and enjoy the rest of your weekend. Good day, chocolate people.